In the high-ceilinged lecture hall of the University of Terran Alliance, Dr. Alan Grant stood before his advanced history class, his presence commanding yet inviting. Today's lesson was titled, The Unity of Humanity, From Division to Reconciliation, a thematic journey through the civil war between Earth and Alpha Centauri, culminating in the unexpected and tumultuous first contact with the alien Gerinthians. As we explore our past, Dr. Grant began, his voice resonating with the gravity of the subject. We delve into a chapter where vengeance seemed not only inevitable, but justified. The scars from our own interstellar civil war had barely begun to heal when humanity faced a new, formidable enemy. The room was filled with the focused attention of students, each drawn to the vivid holographic images flickering to life behind Dr. Grant. The images showed the war-ravaged landscapes of both Earth and Alpha Centauri, cities and colonies smouldering under the aftermath of brutal conflicts. A hand raised from the sea of intent faces, a young woman, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Professor, with such profound bitterness and grief from the war, how did our ancestors manage their anger when faced with yet another enemy? Wasn't the desire for revenge overwhelming? An excellent question, Lara, Dr. Grant acknowledged, nodding appreciatively. The initial reactions to the Gerinthian attacks were indeed visceral. Humanity was still grappling with internal strife when the first Gerinthian vessels appeared, breaching the fragile peace with violence born from misunderstandings and territorial aggression. The holograms shifted, showing sleek, menacing Gerinthian ships emerging from the void, their arrival marked by devastating raids on human outposts. Each attack was a fiery echo of the recent civil war, now casting a shadow over the possibility of internal reconciliation. As tensions escalated, the Gerinthians, misunderstanding our divided state as weakness, pressed their advantage, Dr. Grant continued, his tone reflecting the intensifying conflict. This external threat rekindled the embers of wartime nationalism and unity, but this time it was directed outward. The common foe changed the nature of our fight from civil strife to a united stand. Dr. Grant paused as the images behind him depicted a pivotal moment. A brutal assault by the Gerinthians that decimated a joint Earth-Alpha Centauri settlement. The stark visuals of destruction and loss were a silent testimony to the turning point of human sentiment, from fractured to unified. In the face of this new enemy, leaders from Earth and Alpha Centauri realized that their survival depended not on continuing their feud, but on directing their combined capabilities against the Gerinthians, Dr. Grant explained. This shift from internal conflict to a shared external threat created a crucible for what we would come to call the Alliance of the United Terran. The holographic scene changed to show diplomatic meetings, tense and fraught with the urgency of crisis management, where former rivals stood side by side, plotting a course of retaliation. The narrative now veered towards the strategic military alliances, the pooling of resources, and the amalgamation of technologies that facilitated a robust defense strategy against the alien incursions. As you can see, the initial union was strategic, born of necessity rather than genuine reconciliation, Dr. Grant pointed out. The collective human response was tinged with a deep desire for revenge. This thirst for retribution was a powerful motivator in the early days of the Alliance. It propelled technological innovations and military strategies that were pivotal in the subsequent defense campaigns. The lecture hall darkened momentarily as the displays simulated the preparation for a major counterstrike, the first offensive that humanity would launch against the Gerinthians. This was the climax of their newfound unity, a test of their combined strength and resolve. Yet, as we geared for retaliation, the moral dilemmas were profound, Dr. Grant added, his voice somber. Leaders and citizens alike wrestled with the ethics of revenge. Was our goal merely to repel the invaders, or were we seeking to inflict the same pain that had been dealt to us? The final images of the session showcased the massive fleets of the newly formed Terran Alliance, a mix of Earth and Alpha Centauri military craft, lined up against the backdrop of a starry sky, poised to launch the counterattack that would mark the first true test of the Alliance. As we conclude today's lecture, Dr. Grant said, facing his students, whose faces were lit by the reflected light of the impending virtual battle, consider the ramifications of these decisions. Tomorrow, we will explore the outcome of this counterstrike and the lasting impact of our forebearers' choices on our current political and social landscape. With that, the holograms faded, leaving the room in a thoughtful silence. The students were left to ponder the fine line between justice and revenge, a theme they would explore further as they delved into the consequences of humanity's first unified act of retaliation against an alien threat. The next day, Dr. Alan Grant resumed his lecture, the classroom atmosphere markedly different. The previous session's excitement had given way to a more reflective mood, as the students now understood the gravity of the historical events they were studying. Dr. Grant, sensing the change, nodded slowly before beginning. Yesterday, we witnessed the birth of the Terran Alliance and their initial successful retaliations against the Gerinthians. Today, we delve deeper into the consequences of those actions and the transformation of human motives from vengeance to a quest for lasting peace. The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing tactical animations of the early skirmishes, where human forces had achieved quick, morale-boosting victories. These images transitioned into more extensive campaigns that took the war deep into Gerinthian space. As the war progressed, our forces moved deeper into enemy territory, Dr. Grant explained, pointing to the zones marked in red on the holographic map. Each victory was harder fought, the costs increasingly higher, not just in terms of lives lost, but in the strain on our moral fiber. A student raised her hand, her expression troubled. Professor, at what point did we start questioning whether the cost of this revenge was too high? Were there specific incidents that changed our perspective? Dr. Grant nodded, activating a new series of images. There were many, but one pivotal incident stands out. During a major offensive, our forces accidentally destroyed a Gerinthian civilian convoy. The realization of this mistake brought a profound reckoning. It was no longer possible to see the Gerinthians as mere faceless enemies. The images of their suffering broadcast throughout the Alliance sparked the first major public debates on the ethics of our military strategy. The room fell silent as students absorbed the weight of the tragedy. Dr. Grant let the moment linger before continuing. This marked the beginning of a significant shift. What began as a war fueled by revenge started to turn into a struggle for a more secure and just peace. Leaders on both sides began to explore alternatives to continuous conflict, recognizing that mutual destruction was a looming possibility. He shifted the display to show diplomatic channels opening between Earth, Alpha Centauri, and the Gerinthian leadership. A series of tense, clandestine meetings started, culminating in a pivotal battle near the Gerinthian homeworld that neither side could afford to lose. The display vividly portrayed the battle, a chaotic clash that neither side won. Ships from both factions floated in space, heavily damaged, surrounded by debris. It was here, amidst the wreckage of that battle, that a ceasefire was first proposed, Dr. Grant said, his voice low. Leaders from Earth and Alpha Centauri, together with the Gerinthian commanders, met amid the ruins of their fleets. They saw firsthand the potential for total annihilation. This meeting was fraught with mistrust and accusations, but it planted the seeds for what would eventually become the Treaty of Unity. Dr. Grant paused, allowing the students to reflect on the transformation from vengeance to diplomacy. This treaty, my students, was not merely a cessation of hostilities. It was an agreement to share knowledge, resources, and territories in ways that would ensure no such conflict would arise again. The last part of the lecture focused on the aftermath of the treaty. The Treaty of Unity, Dr. Grant emphasized, is considered a cornerstone of our modern society. It didn't just end a war, it transformed our interstellar relations. Former enemies became allies, focusing on reconstruction and mutual prosperity. The display changed for one last time, showing the contemporary thriving cities and busy spaceports that resulted from the treaty, bustling with diverse species cooperating on various projects. Here you see the legacy of those decisions, a united galactic community that emerged from the ashes of war and vengeance, built on the foundations of empathy, collaboration, and shared goals. As the session concluded, Dr. Grant looked around at his students, now contemplative, their earlier fervor replaced by a deeper understanding. Remember, he concluded, history teaches us not only about the past, but also about our potential to change the future. Let these lessons about the high cost of revenge and the value of cooperation guide you as future leaders. The students left the classroom that day, not just with more historical knowledge, but with a profound appreciation of the complexities of human and alien emotions, the destructive nature of revenge, and the transformative power of reconciliation and peace.